and when we get to it. But this is something Rob brought up before we started, and that is during this past week, it was revealed that Japan has added a new amendment regarding the use or the selling of digital game keys or any kind of modding or changing game code without the creator's permission, and they've made it illegal in several parts. According to Gamasutra, it's a new set of rules as part of the revision to the Unfair Competition Prevention Act, which now recognizes data as a target for protection by law. So basically what this means for the consumer is that in Japan, it is now illegal to resell software product keys without the creator's permission, to distribute tools and programs for altering saved data, and offering services that modify data on the customer's behalf. So the first point is pretty obvious. No second-hand market when it comes to Japan. But it's the other 2 points that we were talking about before we started the stream that are far more interesting. Because what it sounds like is that they're coming down on modders. Anything that someone can do to rewrite or alter game code is going to be considered illegal in Japan. And since you brought up the subject, Rob, I'm going to turn over to you. Like, what do you make of this?
Well, the thing that caught my eye, of course, having come from some of the indie space, is that reselling of keys. Like, I thought, oh, that's awesome. You know, they're clamping down on that. That's a good thing. You know, you can't just have Joe Schmo get a free key and then make money off of it. Certainly, there's parallels in the physical, markets, with GameStop and whatnot. But here it's just, you're not getting a used copy. You're getting like a free, brand new digital copy. So that's what caught my eye, and I was very cool about that. And then digging down into it about the mods and stuff, it makes you think like, not all modders are, first of all, not all modders are trying to recreate the game. They're trying to improve on some of the design elements. They're trying to add some new content. They're just bettering the game as a whole. But then you have modders who come in and change the game completely for the better or for the worse. And, making money off of that is, it has some questionable areas, right, if there's no permission given. But as we had mentioned slightly before the call, or before the stream, is what happens to abandonware? Like, what is that a gray area? What happens? Like if I see a game that I've really liked and the studio closes, am I still allowed to mod the game? Am I still allowed to post those mods? I mean, certainly I can mod it into myself and keep it in a closet my whole life, or amongst like a couple of people. But if that gets out, if money is made, certainly that draws attention. I don't know. It could have a lot of negative impacts or unintended consequences, and it could also have one of those things where a studio decides, what. No, you guys can't mod our games. We have modding tools. We allow for modding, but we're only going to pick certain people who can do it. For a game like now, I guess that also brings up the question: is does a game now just have to put specific language in their game that outlines what you can mod and what you can't? For a game like Planet Coaster, which is one I play frequently, I mean, getting rid of modding is kind of half of the game right there. The content creation is something that they kind of depend on for resale value. A lot of games really lean on that.
Oh yeah, I mean, Steam Workshop functionality for many PC games is a very big deal. I mean, games like Killing Floor, a lot of the titles from Clay Entertainment. I mean, hell, what about Team Fortress, for instance? I mean, a huge part of Team Fortress came from the modding community. XCOM, like when I spoke with oh crap, I forget his name. The owner of Long War Entertainment, the ones who made the Long War mod for XCOM. I mean, we spoke about this, that the original XCOM, Enemy Unknown, had no modding software whatsoever. And they took upon themselves to make that game better. And it led to them basically forming a studio, getting a collaboration with Firaxis. And now they're starting their own game. And that was all because of being able to mod. And then that impact probably led to Firaxis' decision to have actual modding tools that have modding functionality in XCOM 2. I mean, you can see just how much these games do improve thanks to modders coming in and being able to do stuff like this. Dark Souls, for instance. Everybody knows, or should know at this point, that the Dark Souls version on the PC was ridiculously broken to the point that it was almost unplayable for PC gamers. And a modder came up with the DS fix that was so well received that it says on the Steam page that we recommend you install this mod in order to play this game. And you don't hear that too much on a digital store or any store saying, here, you want to play this game? Well, maybe you should have this mod along with it.
Yeah, and it does seem like a giant step backwards for a lot of the modding community, because I know the big discussions in the last couple of years is because a lot of these games, like Planet Coaster, like well, pretty much any game that allows modding, these modders are providing actual content that improves the game significantly, and there's the argument that they deserve some money for that. And this seems like a step backwards because it allows a company to say, no, we're not going to give you money for that. Like, you're not, like, we can cut the modding off here. We can say, well, no, now you're no longer allowed to mod because you're requesting money. It seems like they can pick and choose their battles now, and it puts the power in the hand of the companies. So while the keys part is good to me, and it seems to protect the indie communities, the modding part does have a lot of questions that are raised, and seeing how that'll play out in Japan could certainly provide a blueprint for how it gets spread out in other countries if other countries adopt.
Yep. Oh, are you done, Rob? You kind of like cut out there.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I did finish my statement there.
Yeah, I mean, talking about like companies controlling mods, we saw Bethesda try to do this last year. It was either last year or the year before with their Creators Club, whatever they wanted to call it, and how they were saying, "Oh, we're going to choose the modders to come work with us," and being able to make mods like that. And it turned out a lot of those mods were just horrible. Like, I heard very little from that particular area after it came out. Because it's one of those very weird economies of how modding works. That the best mods we see come from people, outside of these games. Like, I'll give you another example. Do you know City Skylines, right? The city builder? Or
Yes.
traffic simulator, however we want to call it. One of the more popular modders from that, and this is one of those, truth is stranger than fiction things, was a building model or a building creator who used to work at Maxis, who was at who did like SimCity 4 to SimCity 5, and when Maxis kind of like got shuttled and closed and all that, he went to City Skylines and started creating custom building mods or custom building texture packs and stuff like that for an actual just full buildings too for the game. And he actually used that not only to build his portfolio, but he used that as part of his Patreon to kind of live off of that while providing something unique to City Skylines. And they were, more than happy to get that. Because, I mean, the stuff he made was 100% unique and original. And when you're playing like a city builder like that, the more building types and building models you have, that's a win. The more you can make that game different. It's the same thing I'm sure you feel with Planet Coaster. That you probably would have gotten tired of that game if you just kept with the initial, whatever they include in terms of the pieces and the park stuff and nothing else.
Yeah. Certainly there's a lot of creativity you can put into it, but they do have like pre-made stuff in the game that does limit like what you can do in a traditional park. And real quick for Jacken, they're not banning all modding. They're banning modding without the express consent of the developers. So you can't make a mod without getting permission from the developer at hand. So it's not exactly illegal, but it does raise a lot of red flags. And then for Planet Coaster, they literally just released in the last month the ability to upload models. So you as an artist, as a 3D artist, can actually create content that's a part of the game. So you want to make a new merry-go-round, you could make a new merry-go-round with all of the animations and models that it comes with. Again, that brings up the question of whether or not the modders should receive money for that, which to me, yes, they should. the Sims had a store,
Oh yeah.
and EA of course got a giant chunk of whatever the creator got, but at least they got something.
Yeah.
It does sound troublesome, Jack, and yeah, no, that's exactly I think what we're trying to figure out. But yeah, these games that depend so heavily on modding, to get a little bit more control over how that works, it's a little bit, it's a little unsettling, and I'm hoping that it winds up being a good thing overall, but it seems like it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely use Patreon, but like as I'm trying to learn with doing it on this end, like sometimes it is important for you to receive like a consistent pay, or being able to actually say that I am providing a service at X amount of dollars. If you want to use that, you throw me a few bucks, like it's an actual transaction. But as you said, Rob, that takes us into a very murky territory when it comes to video games and this kind of stuff. Because again, when we're talking about mods, they're always being built on a pre-existing framework, i.e. the video game. Something that companies spent hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars trying to create. And it also gets very, what's the word when you think about it? It gets very tricky when we talk about stuff like fair use, or even, again, like, it goes beyond the original author's intent like that. Like, a lot of the stuff we saw with XCOM 2, for instance, many of the more popular mods for that were either quality of life mods that either improved the UI, made it easier to play for some people, or mods that add in more clothing options, more aesthetics. And it's one of those very weird things. Like, I think this is another one of those weird topics when it comes to like the consumer's understanding. That you look at let's say a new house. Let's say someone builds a new house in Skyrim, and you think, oh, that's a lot of work done. And then you put that next to a mod that, let's say, completely redoes the inventory UI. And a lot of people probably think that the house is probably a lot more complicated to do than the UI. But I would argue that the UI in that case, if you're completely rebuilding or building a UI from scratch, probably spend a lot more time and energy. But like in the consumer's eyes, who deserves the money? Like if you had to choose between, let's say, $2 for a new house or $3.75 for a UI mod, what would people go for?
I think it's the player. I think a lot of players who just want to build, and they're fine with the UI, they understand it, then yeah, they're going to go for the house. But for someone who's looking for an overall experience improvement, they're going to go for the UI. I know for like Torchlight 2, when I play that now, since I've just played the heck out of the base game, I only play the mods that I've downloaded, and those are amazing. They are UI improvements. They're core balance improvements. They add more models, more core characters, more items, and it makes the game more interesting as a whole, with more options you can play with. It does, like, it extends the lifetime of the game. It adds more revenue streams for the developer in terms of like new players being able to come back, and the ability for Torchlight 2 was bought out. Was it Runic? That was bought out. So last year or the year before, they were bought out, and so Torchlight 2 kind of was owned by someone else. And if that someone else was like, "Oh, nope, we don't want to have any business to do with modders," then like they'd lose a player. Like I'd be done with it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at because no, that'd be fantastic. And then the Patreon thing, it's great, but if you don't have enough people, it's probably not going to get you a ton of money.
Yep. I mean, I'm trying to raise the Patreon now with, you didn't hear, Rob, that anyone who donates $25 or more before the end of March, or I'm sorry, end of February, will get acknowledged in my second book. I'm going to have a page for all the Patreon supporters like that. So I'm going to
have to get on that.
Everybody get in if you want to be immortalized in the game design book there. But getting back to the point, my mouth just completely dried out. There you go. Like when it comes to, like, as you just said, like companies can change hands, IPs can switch ownerships when things like that happen. And we saw a similar case when the fan remake or the fan spiritual sequel to King's Quest. I spoke with Katie Holohan about this of Phoenix Online Studios. That what happened was, and this is of course one of those crazy bits of timeline. So the King's Quest franchise stopped. They started work on a fan-made game for it. They got to the point where they were actually getting serious about this, so they contacted the original IP holder and they got a license, a fan-made licensing agreement, and everything was good. But then the company that owned the King's Quest IP got bought out by another company, and then that company basically said, all this stuff, no, we're not allowing it. So then they had to apply for a second licensing contract or a fan-made licensing contract with the new company to convince them that we're working on this game. We already have this original deal, and thankfully they were able to get that. But if that second company said no, that's it. Like, you can't keep working on it. Like, we see the same thing with fan-made games, on the down low. Like, stuff like another Metroid, Pokemon Uranium, stuff like that. That once the original creators find out about it and they say you can't work on it, yeah, you're done. Like, you don't have a legal leg to stand on. Like, what lawyer is going to take a case saying, I want to make a new Mario game, and Nintendo says no? Will you fight Nintendo for me? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There aren't more protections. I know people were getting on Steam for not allowing that to happen, like allowing a revenue stream for modders. And I agree with that. That should happen. Like, Steam should provide that.
Yep.
But with this power going to the developers, the developer can just say, you know what? We're a AAA company, and if you do this, we're not gonna go on Steam anymore. And enough AAA games have already pulled out of Steam that I wonder if their revenue's been severely impacted, and they're just afraid to piss off anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been hearing from a lot of independent developers on Twitter that this last winter sale was like one of the worst sales on Steam for a lot of people. Some report that 50 to 60% of profit loss from compared to last year in terms of the winter sale and trying to get their games recognized. And as we were just talking, like, a very cynical thought popped into my head with this law or with this ruling by Japan, that this could also lead to developers saying, oh, so-and-so released a really great mod, and they won't get my permission. Well, you know what? I'm just going to take this mod, or take what they did, and try to do it on my own, and then just say, no, you can't do it. I already have it in my game. I mean, again, like, I'm sure a lot of developers aren't thinking that, but that cynical nature in me is coming out here.
Well, and it's very certainly some developers are going to do that. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's already happened a little bit. Now I look at, I look at Dota, right? It's a mod based on a mod from StarCraft, and or is it? I don't remember if it's StarCraft or Warcraft, but like that mod turned into not just another game, but an entire esport. A giant money making esport. So the original modder, I don't know what piece they're seeing of that, but that seems like a very unprotected thing. Are you going to fight Valve? Maybe Valve bought your mod, maybe they bought it from you, but they certainly also had to go to Blizzard at some point, right? Like, I really wish I knew the finer points of that story, because it's turned into a whole money making machine in a variety of ways just off of a mod. So like, and that's not the only thing Valve has done that wasn't theirs, to begin with, that they've profited off of.
Left 4 Dead is a good example. Like, Turtle Rock worked on the first game, but then Valve took it over for the second game.
Yeah, and they're very smart with their money. Like, of all the companies out there, I feel like Gabe Newell and Valve have figured out the magic formula to just print their own money, and they've made it in such a fashion that you don't know how much money Valve is worth because they're not publicly traded. And I would just love to know that. Like, to me, like, when I looked up the top 100 richest people in tech, there was only one game developer on that whole list, and that was Gabe Newell. Like, of all the people in games that you would think are incredibly wealthy, he's the one. Like, he is the only one who appears on the entire tech industry top 100. He's like in the 50s. So that just kind of makes you think about what the model is here. And you can kind of point at Disney for blueprinting this, because they made all their money off of pre-existing content. You could say they basically are based on fan fiction from old stories. And they have extended copyrights on that so that you can't actually copy their stuff, but they've made all their money copying, old tales.
Oh, yes.
So, and on that note, based on all of the trademarking laws and copyright laws that they've adjusted, there was a period of like 20 years where no public domain stuff came through. But that changed this last month. Like January 1st, a whole bunch of public domain stuff came through just because that extension, like that 20-year extension of trademarks, finally came through. So now every year we're going to get a whole bunch of public domain stuff, and we'll see how long that lasts. The Game Emperor, yes.
Yeah, and it's very interesting about like going back to where you're saying with like Dota 2. Again, like a lot of the stuff that we see, you never know what game is going to be that big hit. And it reminds me of there was a story in 2018 about the author, from the original author of The Witcher, and how he's demanding more money, because when he originally sold the IP rights of The Witcher to CD Projekt Red, like, he didn't think anything was going to come of it. He just like, oh, the small little company wants to make a game, who cares about that? And then that turned into the Witcher trilogy, which is probably one of the most celebrated European RPGs in the last decade. And he probably sold it thinking like this was going to be some like 2-bit, crappy license game. And again, like, it's that very weird thing about the game industry. And it's the same thing when it comes to mods and such. That a Killing Floor is another great example. Killing Floor originally started out as a mod for Unreal. And then from there, they decided to form a company, Tripwire Interactive. They released Killing Floor 1 standalone, then they went to number 2, and now they're reasonably big at this point. So you never really know what games are going to, or what parts of games will come to life like that. As we said earlier, like with what you play with Planet Coaster and Torchlight, that you don't know, like, when you bought those games, what mods you were going to enjoy or what new content people were going to create. Mario Maker is a really big example of this as well. Like, Nintendo would be completely foolish not to release a Mario Maker on the Switch at this point. And, you know...
And, of course, it's Japan that's doing all this.
Yeah. There's some irony for you right there. Let's see, what did Dragon say? I'm sure the author behind Metro is as well. Like, we see this so much with these games, and trying to, as the original developer, you never really know truly what is going to stick with people. Like, again, I'm sure Julian Gollop had no idea when he created the original XCOM that legacy that was being created, Civilization, and so on and so forth. And basically blocking this kind of content or restricting it like this, I think it is going to be an overall net negative for a lot of these games. Now, as we said earlier, though, the one good is that key reselling is illegal. I think we can agree for the most part that that is usually not done on the up and up. As we know with companies like G2A, there's a few other ones that I'm not remembering right now, but as a developer, you don't like to see your keys being sold, on a secondhand mark while you have any control over that. And that's a part that I think is good, but the whole idea of restricting modders, I think that is a very, as we said, I think that's going to cause more harm than good in the long run.
Oh, yeah, it's for sure. And I know, like, just talking about IP in general, which we got on that topic, I wanted to just say the word Tetris, because that's kind of that infamous rags to riches for the game, but not for the original developer, right? So, but I know, like, for me, and I know for a lot of indie devs, it is a struggle in terms of how much you want to protect that IP, because you want it to get in the hands of the people. It's a very generous community. but you know there's a lot of predatory folks out there, and yeah, like you say, this modding thing, um, well, it can certainly protect some people on the indie side. It's kind of a it can generate some ill will and some bad scenarios, so it's something to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also a very interesting point. This will be my last one, then we'll move on, and I'll throw it to you, Rob. That coming from Japan, like Japan doesn't seem like a country that's really known like for like around modding circles for their games. Again, a lot of titles that we hear from Japan are usually very linear experiences or very much a closed system. Stuff like Persona, Dark Souls, Smash Brothers, etc. Like the idea of having modders and being able to have like that free reign has definitely been a PC or U.S. European kind of element to it. And I just wonder, like, is this another case, like as Dragon was saying earlier, is this just a case of Japan, having problem with something that maybe they are not really understanding, like its direct impact?
That's a good point. I mean, that really is. I had not thought about that cultural difference, and that is a very important thing because, like you said, like I can't think of one, and the only one that I can think of is Mario, and then I'm like, just because the Mario Maker, like there's no Zelda Maker, there's no Metroid Maker, so or even any of the Capcom games, like it really is. It's very closed circuit. It's the games are unto themselves, and nobody really questions it. They're great games, and you can't really get like it's hard to argue a lot of that. I mean, on the whole, but it does. It seems like it's a cultural thing. I know that. Yeah, that's interesting. That's just definitely kind of changed my thought process here. And I like Mojo's comment. Modders are giving devs too many black eyes by staging them. That is pretty funny. I agree. That is.
Yeah, like we really don't hear too much like on the PC side when it comes to Japan. Like we're seeing more Japanese developers port games from Japan, or I'm sorry, port console to PC. But I am really curious at like what's going on PC wise in Japan. Like, I would love to know like how is a game like XCOM 2? Like how well did that do in Japan? Or again something like Killing Floor. Like, we talk about all these really great PC games that, again, have extensive modding communities that really built their games around them. But are they really known, in Japan? Again, it's something that I don't have the answer to, and I don't think you have the answer to either.
No, I mean, it does come down to, like, PCs being by default. You have to, like, modders are going to mod because you can do anything on the PC. You get the code, you can suddenly just access it and change it. It's not. I mean, it's a little more difficult for someone like me than like an actual coder. But like, there's no game out there that's safe. You can get online with any PC game and just discover that people have just cheated the heck out of that thing. Yeah, so it's a different culture. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like of all these topics, so we'll have to see how things shake out. But I guess, do you have any final thoughts on it, Rob?
No, that was it was a good place to end, I thought.